Hi.
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 Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Good.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
Yes, alhamdulillah. احنا النهارده in this closed session of the workroom, we will be discussing the current situation with the war going on in Gaza. I feel that we can't help but feel that we're kind of stuck between fight and surrender, or for myself, like I always feel like I'm stuck between I need to do something but I don't know what to do, and like it's just a very weird space. And it's been and just to be able to witness this kind of genocide day in and day out for almost 2 months, I think it's something worth discussing here on this table today. So I'll say why I'm here. I'm here because finally I feel like I can like gather some of my thoughts and start saying certain things that I feel that I actually can say.
Yes.
So why are you here?
I'm here because one of the things I've been experiencing throughout this time is that people have come to me a lot with they're just suffering, you know. I've gotten this question of like, how are you okay? Or like, what are you doing to be okay? So many people aren't able to sleep and eat and just function in the normal way. So one of the things I feel is important to do here is like, get to how do we make peace with our day-to-day at least, you know? How do we function in a way where we're actually okay? And then also, I think it's very interesting to kind of like unpack our experience, our personal experience. Like we're in Egypt and we're so close by and we feel things so strongly here. And then there's also this kind of like being on the side of like feeling the oppression ourselves as well. But then also we're kind of on the other side because we're feeling the need to help and do something from another space. So I think that's also very important. It's like this, we're kind of in this very unique position, you know, and I think it would be, I would love to hear actually like what, how we hold those two, what we can do about those two together, you know. Yeah.
Why are you here, Pierre?
Why am I here? I think unpacking, like offering a space and creating a space for us to unpack what's happening is important. I know it's important for me. I've been in many conversations in this past couple of months, and some of them were very helpful, some of them were very challenging. I'm in a space of healing, and yet I see a lot of bypassing, which I think is counterproductive.
Yeah, what do you mean by
bypassing? As in like, let's not take sides, because we are reaching towards oneness, and therefore we cannot take sides. I need to remain neutral, or I cannot be affected by what's going on. I need to remain at peace, and so on and so forth. Which I understand if you're a saint or hermit and you reach that kind of station, you know, God bless you, and that's great. But for most of us, it's like I think it's just a way to say, okay, I don't want to feel into it. I don't want to explore what's going on, or potentially I'm just so stuck in it that I don't know how to operate, how to talk to people, how to reach out. So I'm here so that we can actually start to unpack and have a conversation as like what it means to feel what we need to feel, to stay in the conversation with people that may share our worldview or my worldview, and how to be in a conversation with people who don't, which is challenging for me. And yet I feel like there's also, it's so important right now, because otherwise, you know, what's happening will just keep on happening.
Yes, I can't, like we were discussing this before, for me, like my situation and where I'm at I don't have these conversations. Like there's no room. There's the room of like the conversation of what are we going to do? I feel so helpless. This kind of notion, like we need to fight, but how can we, like this conversation. But I've never been put in the situation where I have to like defend or to say no, yes, this is a genocide. I don't feel like I wasn't put in a situation where I need to justify or say or like give examples of other genocide and then prove that this is a genocide, right? I find that this is a space that is really difficult if you happen to find yourself in, you know. Like, and I think this is the space where this is where your experience is coming in from, right?
I'm French and I work a lot with people in the US. So both when it comes to the narrative in Western Europe and in the US, there's a narrative of, you know, the line is Israel has a right to self-defense, period. Once you've said that, you've said it all. And if you say anything else, then you're anti-Semitic. And I'm oversimplifying. I understand, you know, there were millions of people in the streets in the US, you know, some people in the streets in France, even though they tried to, you know, they actually forbade the, you know, pro-Palestinian protests in France,
really?
which is, you know, quite interesting in the land of so-called freedom and les Lumières and so on and so forth. So my point is how to be in a conversation when people are telling me, when I'm like, yeah, but there's a massacre, there's a genocide, let's do something about it. And people tell me, well, and the answer sometimes is just to send me the Hamas charter of like, well, but this is what we're fighting. So there's an oversimplification and there's well, it's Hamas versus Israel, it's evil versus, you know, forces of good versus forces of evil. And from there, everybody's in their own camp and we get stuck and we get angry and we don't hear each other. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's any progress in how we can potentially see each other's humanity. Because the people who are telling me Israel has a right to self-defense, I hear them, but I don't hear, and Palestine has a right to self-defense.
Yes, I think being, like living here, how long have you lived?
It's been 13 years.
Yeah. So you kind of grasp the collective in the Middle East. Like the collective here is very, or at least in Egypt, I mean, we have been pro-Palestine, not pro-Palestine, we have lived this Qadiyya Palestiniya for, as far as I remember, been like,
the songs in school and all these things.
Everything with Muhammad al-Durra, everything, like all the so we kind of have it like within our blood. It's not something that I would think about, you know, and then now looking at that there is a debate, like I feel, you know, you being here, you started to grasp that there's no debate, right?
Yeah, and that's a relief. For me being here, okay, at least we can agree as to like there's this dehumanization, you know, of Palestinian is at least acknowledged here. And it's interesting, and we were talking about making it personal when a few days ago I was talking to my mother in France, and she saw my teenage daughter's nails who were painted with the Palestinian flag. And she was like, oh, is that the Italian flag? And I was like, no, that's not the Italian flag, that's a Palestinian flag. And I was like, so let's go there, right? Shall we go there?
Nothing.
And there was nothing. Now there may be, you know, personal things around my family and being conflict avoidance, but there's also a sense of like, oh, okay, well,
it's not ours.
That's tricky, that's not ours, it doesn't concern us really. And I'm curious, I'm wondering, because I've been told also like, well, you're not from there, you don't live there, therefore why do you care so much? Are you trying to show people that you care? Are you virtue signaling? And to me, this is really angering me, because I'm like, the question is not why am I angry? The question is like, why aren't you angry right now? Especially when I talk to my American brothers and sisters, because you're paying the bill for that genocide. So you should be right now asking yourself, am I okay with paying the bill for that? Because your tax money are basically killing people right now. So the question is not, I should care because I live 300 kilometers away from Gaza. The question is that I'm human, right? And therefore, I should care because right now that's the most horrific things happening. There's a lot of, tragedies happening around the world, but I think we can agree. But this one is really like, how can we not look at it? How can we not acknowledge it? And how can we be like, well, a lot of horrible things are happening in the world. Therefore, we're not going to start to pick and choose. We're just going to stay out of it. And I think that's the bypassing I'm talking about.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to make very clear, that we're not here to discuss what's happening there or how the Palestinians feel, or it's kind of just overwhelming to think about it. And but we're here to like talk about how we feel as the witnesses of this genocide. And I think we can extend prayers and support and whatever there is in our capacity to extend to the Palestinians. So now there is the notion in the healing community that we're all one and the same, like we're all connected. And quite frankly, the idea of being connected to these hideous crimes or to the people who are doing these hideous crimes, it kind of sends shivers up my spine. I can't feel this connectedness, and there's always that it's like, yeah, but this is you're talking about separation, and separation is alienation, and.
So I think we're all connected in terms of emotions. So when we get to a place where we can't not feel what we're feeling, then you just have to feel it, because emotions are there for a reason. They serve a function. And in this case, for example, this anger, that you're speaking of and that we're always experiencing, every day is there for specific purposes. And the thing is, like, when we reject these situations, it's very hard to, like, when we reject these things that come up within us, it's very hard to actually make sense of the world, So with anger, for example, it's like it's there to mobilize change, Like we were saying, it's like there is such a thing as divine anger. So when you have divine anger, it's like you say, yeah, like, don't drown that puppy, don't starve that child, don't beat that woman. Like, this makes perfect sense, And like, if we imagine a world without anger, then like nothing would happen, nothing would change, right? So I think, like, in that sense, yes, we're all connected, because like there's anger on both ends, and there's this feeling of like, this can't happen, and there's an injustice and all of that. But that is not going to make you feel connected on an individual level to those people, right? But what can is knowing that people are vehicles for things to happen in the world. And this is very insensitive to say, like you can't go up to someone who is suffering and say something like, you know what, it's all perfect anyway, and like there's a harmony to things, and and that's the bypassing, right? And that's like when we're just like ignoring the problem and saying there's perfection.
Especially it's not like, I agree with or I can see what you're saying when it comes to like a personal journey.
Yeah.
But this is not a personal journey. This is like a crisis.
Yeah.
Like it is a crisis that is upon us, and it's happening to the children. Yeah. Like this, the purest, and I find it very hard. No, you know what? I will not accept it. Yeah. And I will not claim oneness, and I will not, as you said, I'm not going to spiritually bypass that, and I will acknowledge the fact that it is what it is, and it is very real. Yes. It is very real, and so it demands for me to take a stance.
It does for sure. We have to take a stance, but then there's also the question of how do I make sure that I'm okay on a personal level? Because you were saying it's not a personal journey, and it's not truly, it is this like massive happening, this atrocity that is happening that is affecting so many things, even if you're not aware of it. It's just like these waves, this ripple effect. But it is on some level in your day-to-day, it is a personal thing that is happening, yeah? And so how do you make your peace with that as well? How do you make sure that you're sleeping well and you're eating well and you're functioning, you know? Because like we were saying, you know, it's important that I see the harmony in things so that I can create more harmony around me. So if we think of the world as a dual world, you know, where there are always opposites, there's always the night and the day, there's always the dark and the light, there's always going to be one thing so that you may know the other. But because of that, it means that one side of the spectrum cannot suddenly disappear. So we can't suddenly expect the world to be a wonderful place. We can't. Yeah, just on a fundamental level. So what I'm getting at is we have to exist on both levels at the same time. So there is a part of you that, because we're saying fight and surrender. So yeah, we're speaking of the fight, but like, how do I surrender to the fact that this world is still worth fighting for? It's still a beautiful place. It still makes sense. It's still something that, you know.
But like, does it?
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? So it's like coming back to, okay, on some level, even if I'm not able to grasp this conceptually in this moment because my emotions are so strong, and those take, like, that's stage one. Like, you can't, if you're feeling something, feel it, you know? Don't sit and conceptualize and say, yes, okay, there is a perfection in everything. Like, no, just don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that, you know? But like, once you're able to take a step back and you take a breather and you're saying like, okay, listen, I'm just suffering. Like, I'm not able to do the things I need to do in my life.
So I'm going to extend myself that space.
Yeah, you know, and that's the way, like, but making sure that you're living on both levels is how we're not bypassing, yeah? Because like, if you just stay there with the oneness and the perfection with everything, then you're not going to change anything, nothing's going to really shift. Yeah. But like, when you're doing both, like you say, okay, on some level, something's going on, there is a wisdom to it, maybe I don't get it, maybe I do sometimes, you know, entertain that, but then also say, okay, what needs to be done? What is my sacred duty in this world? You know, like, what do I have in my hands? Yeah.
Pierre Ettienne, what do you think? Are we all connected?
I don't know. Ideally, we should be all connected. I think it's a beautiful idea. I think if we look at the cellular level or metaphysical level or, you know, energetic level, we are all connected. At the same time, do we want to be connected? That's also a question. Like, how much are we acknowledging that connection? And how much are we willing to explore it? And instead of saying we, maybe I can go back and explore and saying, okay, am I, you know, to what extent do I want to connect? For example, right now, you know, I've been in spaces with, to be very concrete, with IDF soldiers. Yeah. So how do I want to connect to IDF soldiers? And I was called, you know, and being told, well, you're being hypocritical because I had, let's say, a little bit of a hard time and express my discomfort, to say the least, of being in that space, and had the opportunity to express what I need to express and to have a back and forth, and, you know, we all have our own narrative. And at the same time, I was told, but where is the red line, right? Like, if you are in spaces with other people, you know, like, guys are like, well, but what if, like, people from Hamas are coming, you know? What if people from the US military are coming? What if? So here there's a question for me that's a little bit of a mindfuck, which is, okay, I want to be connected, but I also need to establish healthy boundaries. Yes. And we've talked about that, which is I think if I shut down that dialogue, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to you, and I don't want to acknowledge your reality, I can see how that allows me to establish healthy boundaries and for me to, you know, stay strong and my ground. But at the same time, I'm not understanding where is that person coming from, and vice versa, and that person is not understanding where I'm coming from and what I wish to express. So where is that red line? Where are these boundaries? How do we do this?
Like, for me, on a personal level, it's like Bassem Youssef said something very brilliant. Like, he was talking about abusive relationships, and this is how an abusive relationship is. And I feel, this like hit home quite strongly, because this is exactly how I felt. Because, you know, there's always that underlying racism, like, like, we're not equal, right? but it was never like center stage as it is right now. So for me, my boundary is, if you can't see me as an equal, a respected equal, then you cannot see me at all, and I cannot see you at all. And this is where my boundary is at. This is where I will not see others' realities, because there needs to be like a minimal point of agreement, right? Where we see eye to eye. I see that we are connected. I see that we share the same feelings, but this is not present in this situation. This is not how it is in this situation, unfortunately. And this is, for me, is like this is the wall. This is, it's not like a porous kind of boundary. No, it's like a wall of, this is my truth and this is my side, and I will take sides, and there is a separation, because until you acknowledge my existence and my right to exist, actually, or my right to live equally with my own humanity, my right to speak, right? Because like in abusive relationships, one of the like from my own experience, I mean, it's the self-censorship. This happens because you're afraid, like maybe this is not on a collective level, but again, it could be a mirror, like this is a personal journey. But again, there's that self-censorship was like, can I say this? What if I say this? If I say this, this is going to happen. So you end up censoring yourself. You end up like, you're not saying it at all. And when you master the courage to do it, you know what happens? You become censored. Like, no, you didn't say that. And now I can't help but wonder, like, is this what's happening on a collective level? Like now, finally, we're speaking up. And finally, like, there's that turnaround in social media and there's that voice, right? It's being heard. But then on the other side, there's that cancellation that is just deafening. Yani. Like, I mean, I don't know if you share that kind of nightmare where you're screaming at the top of your lungs and nobody can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, right? I feel like it's like a collective nightmare that all of us had. I feel this is what's happening right now, because it's insane. Like people are screaming at the top of the lungs, like cease fire now, right? And like there's a wave of silence that is just, you can't help but be angry at, right?
I think it's important to like actually acknowledge the fact that like it's not just the ceasefire like message that is like suddenly becoming like this point of conflict, like I'm not being heard. It's just like realizations of like all the things that have happened in the past where we haven't been heard, I feel so many people have also spoken about this, or I've heard this in so many places where it's just like this, like it's dawning upon people that, oh my gosh, there are systems in play that don't acknowledge me, or like that don't respect my language, don't respect my religion, my culture, like all of these things. And like suddenly realizing these things is heartbreaking. Yeah. It's just this like it's like you were so mistaken, or you were so blinded, or you thought things were a different way. And to just like be so confronted with that, yes. I think this is one of the major things we're experiencing here. Yeah. And like, I feel like actually it's turning into something positive in terms of like the boycotting and so, supporting the local brands and things like remembering our music, our songs, our stuff, but still like this is a big grief, that is really being experienced.
Yeah. Like I always feel that there's within every crisis, especially as a person who's witnessing, again, I want to bring back to, this is the experience, we're talking about the experience of the people witnessing the genocide, not by any means yes. experiencing it, because this is like there's a big difference. Like in no way I can even claim to know how anyone else would feel, but I know how I feel witnessing this. And I felt what you're saying. And again, I'll go back to the example of the abusive relationship. Like the minute you start seeing your worth.
Yes.
Like the minute
wake-up call.
That wake-up call was like, oh my goodness, how did I allow this? Yeah. How did I allow this to happen to me? How did I allow the fact that I lost my own language? Yeah. Like, with all the education and where did my Arabic language go? Where is my understanding of that? Right? Where is the poetry? It broke my heart. Like it really broke my heart, because I felt that I have allowed so many things to be lost within me, right? But again, as all wake-up calls, it is purposeful. As devastating as it is purposeful to just go back to going back to where you stand, what you believe in. You know that there's that Allahumma irini al-haqqa haqq. You know that I always feel, that's a blessing. That now I can see the truth, my truth.
You can own it,
and I can own my truth, and I can you know what, this is what I stand for, and this is what I want to do, and this is that kind of clarity. It is a blessing, but again, it is
it's tough.
It's very tough. It is very tough. It's insane, honestly. It's insane. And maybe this is going to make us just look within for a minute and see that, who we truly are, right? And what we stand for.
I think that's a big one, and I feel like what's happening right now is an opportunity for us not only to understand, like you said, where I stand and what's important to me, and I've mentioned before to some people, asking really what do we have a common definition of humanity?
Yes.
Do we understand here that it's less about Palestinians versus Israelis, even though I understand there's a people that's occupied and occupier, there's a colonizer here, and people who've been historically occupied and brutalized and starved and so on and so forth. So things have to be put into context. At the same time, there's also two sides, which is the people who want to continue the war, and they're on both sides, and then the people who want to stop the war who are also on both sides. Yeah. If we're to go back to that oversimplification of sides. And I think that's a real issue, because if some of the people I talked to were but we can't stop talking about October 7th. I'm okay, I acknowledge October 7th, I acknowledge the loss of civilians. Within historical context, can we talk about the 75 years before October 7th? Can we talk about October 8th and 9th and 10th and 11th? And for the past 2 months, there is such a double standard here.
It is very tricky. I don't talk about politics.
And yet?
I really don't. I can go collective level and I can go personal level, but state level, I just can't. I don't feel like I can, I have that kind of radical acceptance of it is what it is.
And also that you only have the information that you're given, so you don't really ever know what's actually going on.
Exactly. So it's just, I feel what I feel on a collective level, collective human level. Yeah. And I feel what I feel on a personal level and next to kin, the people around me. But again, to view things from a diplomatic point of view, it's just, for me, it's not something that I don't have the knowledge, and I don't have the capacity to understand, really.
Then let's go on an individual level. And really explore, your response, my response, everybody's response to what's happening. And it's an invitation to everybody watching and listening to ask yourself, okay, in the face of that genocide, of that massacre, really asking, number one, if you're questioning that it's a genocide, please go back to the definition of genocide. Let's just, this is not even a controversial statement anymore. Yeah. When we talk about, statement of intention, when we talk about the actual use of force, by the definition, by international law, this is genocide. Within the context of an apartheid state, which once again, the Convention of Apartheid reminds us this is not even a controversial statement. Going back to the individual level, it's okay, if you're questioning that, where do you stand? What does that mean? What are the many filters here that are getting in between you and, I would say, your humanity? Yes. And I'm going back to myself, when I was confronted and in spaces with Israeli soldiers, I was it was so hard for me to say, okay, let me try to understand and talk to you, because where the fuck are you coming from? Like, how can you stand here and tell me that what's happening right now is right, that what you're fighting for is right?
And
especially right now.
And what was your like individual learning out of that? Like, because I mean, I'm sure there was.
Have you gotten a learning?
My learning. So what happened here is, I'm almost grateful, right, to these times where I got to sit with people and we thoroughly disagree. We have different values, different life, different, I would say, ways to see the world clearly. And I understand. For example, the first time it happened, after 3 days of just being like angry and and having really intense conversations, and some of my colleagues being like, okay, we need to move that energy. And I was like, this is a lot of energy. The problem is not me being angry. The problem is that you not being angry right now, because this is in that space and we have an opportunity to all learn. And at some point I reached out, because I was like, okay, you, the soldiers, come with me. Let's go for a walk. Tell me where you're coming from. Why are you doing this? I'll tell you who am I and why I'm angry. And it's, the learning is more for me to understand that, again, if you grew up in a narrative and you're indoctrinated, then obviously then we start questioning the truth. Then I start to have people telling me, well, but I'm protecting my family, right? This is why I'm going to go, or this is why they're not human, because they want to get rid of us. And the last one who tried to do this, were Nazis, and they had to be fought and eliminated and be done with, and therefore we're doing the same thing. Like these kind of narratives, which could also be interesting for us to explore, that cycle of trauma, and how much historical trauma is behind the dehumanization of Palestinians by Israelis. Yes. I think that's a really interesting question. And I'm so grateful for Gabor Mate and other people who were reminding us that there's a lot of trauma. This is just not a historical or political issue. If we can see that from the standpoint of the nervous system, of the fear of something's going to happen to us, so we need to preemptively kill them all. It doesn't excuse it, but it gives us a glimpse into oh wow.
Yeah. Yani I stand firmly in my boundary. If you think I'm a human animal, I will not see you, and I will not be seen by you. And if I'm not seen by you, I will not see you, basically. And that's that, And I will honor that separation.
Yeah.
I will honor that separation until, because you know how you need to see the shadow first. If we're talking about this is a healing podcast on a healing with two teachers, so we can go there, right? So how when you're looking at your shadows, right? There's you were saying, the duality of things. Mm-hmm. So maybe the separation is part of what we need to be looking at. Because I kept thinking is I cannot feel, I'm not, it's just, I'm not connected. I'm not, and I will not be, right? Very firmly, that's my stance. And I'm these killings, these hideous crimes, if someone, in front of me, I'll probably eat his head, physically, right? But that's me. And I think if I go back to the ideologies of healing or the whole self-mastery journey, separation is one of the shadows, maybe, one of the collective shadows that we need to look at. And yes, we are separate. Why are we separate? Because there is no minimal denominator that says that we're all humans, right? That says, no, what you feel is what I feel. An eye for an eye. That's not on the table.
I'm wondering, though, if when we see it through the lens of collective trauma, if it does become something that's on the table, because Like if you actually do try to understand, you know, what's going on, and we say, okay, it is trauma, does that make it better? I don't know, does it?
I don't think it excuses it.
Yeah, it doesn't excuse
But I do think it gives us an opportunity to understand and explore, okay, what's happening. And you know, we've said it before, like, I think it's really important for us to understand and to explore the fact that the people who were in concentration camps, you know, 70 years ago, today are running a concentration camp. This is not as per my definition. If you look at Norman Finkelstein research, he's using that term because some also people, senior Israeli intelligence people, are using that term. So for us to understand that, oh wow, this is a really complex, twisted and fucked, if you allow me, situation here of like repeating that trauma, the oppressed becoming the oppressor, right? And therefore, how do we hold that shadow? Because I agree with you. If you separate, you know, when I met the Israeli soldier the second day, I said, let's fight. Yeah. I had the same answer. I was like, let's just punch each other because right now I don't know how to talk to you.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was the first. But then what? Like, how does that help for us to bridge that gap?
We want to
bridge that gap. Yeah, okay, we're going to fight each other. Whether it's a one-on-one with boxing gloves or whether it's, you know, an army versus a militia, I don't think that takes us, it doesn't seem to take us anywhere but into a deeper hole with more and more blood of civilians. So I don't have an answer, but for us to be able to hold that shadow, and I'm not saying go to a support group, you know, to be with, you know, Israelis and others, even though I do know groups in the US who are doing this. You know, they're putting people together and they get to know each other, and this is how they're bridging the gap, and eventually they start to see each other as human. My challenging question, and I can't believe I'm kind of like right now, you know, defending it, like, I sound like I'm defending Israelis, but if you're like, okay, you don't see me as human, therefore I don't see you, I don't want to talk to you, then how do you see that person? What do you see that person as?
I don't see them.
But go deeper in that, because what does that mean? That means also you don't see that person as human either.
No, I don't.
So you know what I mean? So we're in a dead end.
Yep.
You're in the same place, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I am aware of that, but I'm honoring, like, that's something that I would do to myself. I will give myself the space to, you know what, Yara, it is disgusting.
Yeah.
And you have the right.
Yeah.
You have the right.
Yeah.
I have the right to, like, look at that and look at the news and look at this and just say,
to feel.
You know, like, no, I'm sure you're not human. And this is where I am today. And as I have like my belief system, like I'm a Muslim, so my belief system always goes to and no, anything can change and anything can happen. But for today and for what I'm living in day in and day out, witnessing this, I will allow myself the space where I say, like, no, that's not human. That's not human doing, really. It's devastating, quite frankly.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
just to push that reflection and to go back to what we mentioned earlier, which is also and I'm speaking here as somebody who works in that healing space, right? In these healing spaces, whether it's like retreats or one-on-one or groups, whatever, you know, it's like, okay, for people to come and try to do what? To heal. What does that mean? Finding peace with what's happening, being okay to, you know, finding that sense of space, being able to regulate my nervous system, being able to not get overwhelmed by what's happening. Yeah. Part of the work of healing is not just again, you know, like Carl Jung mentioned, imagining figures of light, right? It is also about exploring these shadows.
Doing the work.
So doing the work, exploring these shadows, I think is both in terms of like, for us to go into that, like, I'm disgusting. Why are they doing this? I'm so angry. For us to create a space for people to express that anger. Yeah. And I think the censorship that you talked about is really it's unhealthy. It's just making it worse. And so it's important for us to have a space to express ourselves without being under, I think, any illusion that me posting on Instagram is not going to bring peace in the Middle East. You know, it's very much an element of just me being able to have an outlet and feel better.
Let off some steam.
And to a certain extent, at least for some of my people, to give them also an understanding of some of the things they don't understand.
Yeah.
I've had some friends reposting stuff where IDF soldiers tagged themselves, and I was like, whoa. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't believe that we should be doing this. So,
you might need to give me their numbers.
But that's my point. And then the answer was like, oh, sorry, didn't realize that was not in my awareness. I was like, okay, well, then it's the time for it to be in your awareness right now. Because if you're not aware, then you're not conscious of what's happening. At the same time, I think we need to hold space also for people who are like, no, this is not. I'm okay what's happening. Because unless you're a saint, unless you're in a really elevated state where you see that big picture, which is for 99% of us is not the case, then that means you're bypassing.
Yeah.
That means you're like, I don't want to go there. I don't think, I don't think we should get angry. I don't think we should get sad. Yeah. There's a perfect plan. Can we hold space for that too? And where is this coming from? Are you willing, or do we have the space for you to just go a little deeper and really connect to that humanity?
I was one of the things that I was reflecting on, because when this started, I have the channel Joie de Vivre, and so I stopped. I wasn't able to post anything. I felt like I don't want to take that space, and at the same time, I had nothing to say. Like I was overwhelmed, and I was like kind of in shock of like oh my goodness, how can the world carry so much evil like that state, right? And then after a while, I was even talking to my crew, and there is so much joy in Gaza. Like there's not joy, but c'est joie de vivre. Because you'd see those images of kids sliding in the sand and the rubble, and people getting married and doing the ma'luba, like on a small stove like that, doing like fancy because they love to cook, right? So I just look at that and I would say, oh my goodness, I need to work on my emotional resilience. Like I claim, like the reason why Joie de Vivre existed was because, from adversity, one can appreciate the little things, right? When you realize that you can't solve the big problem, you focus on today, which is basically presence, right? This is what presence is. So I just look at that and I'm saying, wow, there's so much to learn from that. Mm-hmm. There's so much to reflect from that. But again, I can't help but feel the anger. And with anger, I feel the helplessness, because just, honestly, after a while, like that slight tap, even with the iPhone, the problem is like it's such a gentle tap. And then you share, like it doesn't feel I want to like maybe click something, as like that tap.
Go back to Nokia.
Exactly, like even I want to feel like I'm maybe doing something, right? So how can one find that space, like of knowing what to do if they don't know what to do?
Yeah. Is it one or the other though? Isn't that whole point? Like holding that tension of opposites. Like when you said earlier, I can't be joyous because of what's happening. Isn't it also kind of a betrayal? Like I've worked with people for the past 10 years dealing with cancer diagnosis, who are having a clear reminder of their mortality. And who are therefore in a space where they are in pain, they are afraid, and because of that, they are loving more strongly, they are connecting more deeply, because they're not taking it for granted anymore. Like the idea of witnessing weddings, I don't know if there's weddings, but I saw there was one wedding in Gaza. What a beautiful thing of people saying, we might be dead tomorrow, which is, yeah, it is more true for them because of the bombardments of the Israeli army. Who says that it's not true for us either? You know, and so when I come back from, one day I came back from, in the US, I was working again with somebody who was terminal, did a house call, and while I was in his house, I was like, oh wow, his wife looks like my wife, you know, the pictures look like my family pictures, like this could be me in that bed. And I came out of this room and out of this house, and when I went home, I was both depressed and sad and so grateful because I wasn't in that bed, you know, because my kids were healthy and they were okay. So I think for us to be able to acknowledge here that we need to be very careful to say, I cannot anymore be grateful, I cannot be joyous. Maybe not. I don't have a definitive answer, but I think we need to be very careful because we're bringing ourselves down, like, you know, out of balance. I think that's what I'm trying to say here.
No, I think, do you have...
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, what I'm hearing really, like, as we speak is, like, how the human being has this tendency to, like, externalize and internalize. So, like, when we're looking outside, it's like these atrocities, you know, it's just so terrible. And so it's natural that the anger unfolds and it comes, you know, and that's the way it has to be. And then when we look inside, it's like, then we see the gratitude. So it's like this kind of like playing, you know, in these days that we're living, just this like between the anger outside and the gratitude inside. So how many of us like have had this conversation with our friends where like, wow, you know, I have a warm bed and a good meal and, you know, and safety, you know. So I think like if we're just going to soften the anger, it will be like in the moments when we look at our own lives, you know, and then when we're looking at the others, then the sharpness will come and they will balance each other out that way, you know. Yeah, but that's all we, like for me, that's all we can do really. What else is there? Like how else will we make sense of things really?
I think we need both. Yeah. Like we really need both. I think was that Osho who said, you know, like life is like a tree. You know, happiness are the branches and sadness are the roots. And the deeper the roots, the higher the happiness, and vice versa. Which means oftentimes, yes, the people who've been through the biggest challenges, the worst challenges, or also the people who actually have a view on life and a perspective on life that, you know, you and I may not have because we didn't go through what we've been through. Yeah. Although we've been through our own, you know, version of that. And the question is like really what are we learning from that? We're talking about learning. How are we changing anything, you know, in the way we behave, in the way we relate, in the way we enjoy? Do I get lost when I go home and start scrolling? Or do I go home and take a moment to play a video game with my son and then, you know, just play maybe a game with my daughter and then hug my wife? Like, you know what I mean?
And like I always, like I have this friend that, for example, she's a writer and she's helping writers in Gaza to write their stories. She's mentoring them, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's beautiful because there are certain things that we can actually do, like within our capacity. I have another friend that just had like a big exhibition where artists can express themselves. The song, like the artists, the bands that create songs. I feel that this is also a beautiful outlet to that anger. Like, because, you know, as you said, anger is an energy and you have to get it out. Even the simplest form is through like that slight tapping of a chair. And grateful that people would make us feel that that's enough, right? Like I feel very grateful. It's like, is this really, you know? But I'm grateful. But there's also other things that one can find the space to do if they're called to do it. You know, like if someone's angry and they feel very frustrated, just find where is your space where you can create something. Like someone in therapy, for example, can give certain, if there's internet or accessibility, can give like certain free therapy sessions. You know, like there are little things on a human level that we can do for one another. What you're doing, you're supporting other people within the community that are maybe feeling this deeper. And you know what? So maybe there is little things that we can do that would kind of diffuse this anger. And when there's not, we go to that place where we counter it with gratitude. We counter it where like, I'm going in my bed and I'm like, there's food on my table and my child is safe, and you know, and I extend that gratitude, and then I extend that prayer more and more strongly to the unfortunate, you know, to the Palestinians and so on and so forth. You know, like I feel it's such a continuous struggle. That's why it's the struggle between fight and surrender. You know, but I feel like the least that we can do is just maybe look within. You know, like as you said, in the times of adversity, it's an opportunity. It's always an opportunity. Like when change and when crisis happens, there is something shifting, there's something moving that you can actually, that unsettlement inside of us is just a chance for us. If I have nothing to do, I just can look at that unsettlement, like that anger you carried to that idea of soldier, that made you go into your own journey. Wasn't that correct?
Yeah.
So it's just, I guess, and no, I'm glad that we did not, yani I'm like, in no way this is a space to find solutions, because I don't think there's no solutions to be found, and I feel that this is the surrender part.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, there are no like concrete solutions, but like what we can shift our focus to is how can I make sure that I'm as well as I can be, so that I can be there for those who need me, you know? That's what I think is important.
And as part of that, I think reaching out to be held also in that sadness, in that anger, in that sense of injustice. I think there's a lot of beauty. I've had brothers reaching out and saying, "Can you please, you know, I need people to hold me right now, because it's because I'm about to collapse, you know, because my family is there, and so on and so forth." And so I think for us to be able also to create these spaces where we can have an opportunity to express what needs to be expressed. The goal is not to not get angry. The goal is to not get stuck in that state of anger. To be able to come in and out, like you said, like I'm angry right now, and at the same time I'm deeply grateful because, you know, my family is not being bombarded. But that doesn't mean that, you know, one doesn't contradict the other. They're not mutually exclusive. So I think if we can give ourselves permission to be, I want to say, resilient enough, emotionally resilient enough to be able to, you know, undulate and pendulate and hold both, and acknowledge that all of these emotions are normal and they're human, and to go back to the individual level, it's really okay. How can I contribute? Again, without the illusion of bringing solutions and solving things.
That savior complex, we're all like, it's like, I'm gonna save the world.
You know, may I be forgiven for that illusion. But, and at the same time, like I know, for example, for me, I'm having conversation, you know, with people who view things differently. I don't like these conversations. I don't enjoy these conversations. And at the same time, I did reach out, you know, to IDF soldiers I know at the very beginning. I was like, what are you up to? Where do you stand? I'm not here to tell you do this, do that, okay? But I'm here to tell you that there was a time when we stood in a space where we spoke of integrity, we spoke of, you know, redeeming yourself, we spoke of things to try to, you know, move towards a solution that's more fair and just to all. And a few months later, there's a ground invasion that I believe you're part of. Where do you stand? And the answer is not clear. And it's not because, you know, I'm not expecting for him to do or for them to do what I want them to do. But I'm just saying, I don't want to say, you know, you're an asshole, I'm going to cancel you out. Because that's not, I don't see that as helpful. I understand the boundaries.
Yes.
And there's people with who I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah. We're not going to have that conversation, you're too far.
I feel like you had that connection. You know, you had that connection because like in healing spaces, you create a certain connection, you create a certain bond where you assume that we're one and the same. And then things happen that you see that maybe there is a deeper level. There's a deeper level of
There's more
knowing
work
this,
to be
and
done,
there's more
yeah.
to be done, and there's more. Yani, there's just so much more. I feel like there's so much more, but thing is, every person, you know where your heart is, and then you do the best you can. I feel that's my life motto. Like,
Yeah, you check yourself.
I check myself and I see where I'm aligned, and I pray for the truth, for me to see the truth clearly, and take the necessary steps when I feel that I can actually take them, and honor the fact that I'm going to sit still and rest until I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
You know. And Yani, thank you for saying resilient, because that kind of pendulum you were speaking about, going from anger to surrender, and from surrender to anger, this is the state where we can actually be resilient enough and keep going, to be able to keep like honoring our whatever that needs to be done, us and anyone else. You know what I mean?
Actually, sometimes, in times of hardship, it's like one of the main reasons to work on being well is because other people need you. As simple as that.
100%.
It's just like, I can't check out because I need to be here,
And understanding what resilience means, it's because many of us are like, I need to stay strong. But we do need times to be held, to be able to surrender and collapse and be held. Because that's what allows us to pendulate. So like there's one of my mentors, Mrs. Nkemen Duffo, gave me that image of really these two components of resilience, or strength and flexibility. The more I'm rigid, the less flexible I become and the less resilient I become. And I think that's true both cognitively, intellectually, emotionally, physically. And so that's why it's an invitation for all of us to challenge ourselves, and to me to challenge myself here to understand, okay, what does that mean? How can I be strong and have healthy boundaries, and be there for the ones I love, and be there for some of the people who need me, and at the same time acknowledge that sometimes I'm gonna have to reach out and be like, hey guys, I'm just losing my shit right now, and I need people to be able to hold me. I need to yell, I need to cry, I need to do something, so that then I can go back and forth. Because otherwise, and if I'm always there, that's also not helpful. To me, to my family, to my friends, the people around me, to the people I'm talking with, to people I'm trying to, quote unquote, have a dialogue with or have a conversation with, to build that bridge, So for us to be able to go back and forth here is, more flexibility can be helpful. And it's hard. It's hard during these times.
Yes.
Like when they say it, like without receptivity, strength destroys itself.
I love that. Can you say it again?
Without receptivity, strength destroys itself. It's true, It's like it becomes like too sharp.
Yeah. And on that note, I want to thank you both for your presence, for sharing the workroom table.
Thank you.
Honestly, I feel grateful for being able to speak about this, because for the past 2 months I was not able to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Same here.